It's been a rallying cry you may have heard a few times over the past few years. Well, with the pandemic and school boards and libraries. But I assure you, the phrase local control has been around for a bit. In fact, it's one of the conservative principles. The level of government that governs best is the one that governs least. The only reason we would elevate above a city when it comes to governance, the only reason would be that you need to bring in additional resources. That'd be financial resources or some sort of expertise to help you that you couldn't get at a local level. But we've seen a flurry of bills these past few years that many would say calls into question that, conservative philosophy, that we need a state law to determine how an issue should be handled on the local level or to override what has already been handled on the local level. What books should be in the libraries, what pronouns to use for transgender students, whether masks should be worn to stop the spread of a disease at a school, or whether cities can decide what regulations they can impose for allowing affordable housing. Those are all bills being considered this year at the State House. Are they examples of a breach of conservative principles? Well, we decided to ask a couple of Republicans who have some thoughts on local control. One of them, the former chair of the Idaho Republican Party, Trent Clark.
Well, as a political philosophy, it has always been a philosophy associated with conservatives, the conservative right. It's based on the concept that you only elevate an item of governance if you absolutely have to. That cities and towns should be able to solve problems for themselves.
Exactly 8 years ago, Trent Clark wrote an op-ed about this very thing, calling the term local control something that carries drastically different meanings for different legislators.
Conservatives in Idaho, at least in the past, have always believed in local control. We believe that about education, we believe that about schools, and we certainly believe that about most forms of regulation.
But lately,
I hang my head in shame, and all of you should. And everyone in this room should as well.
Including this legislative session.
And having more guns in my school doesn't make me feel any safer.
We've seen a lean away from local control.
What you're missing there is the actual human dialogue that needs to go on. Dealing with those issues at the local level requires that one-on-one interface. Dealing with that issue in Boise allows you to get your way without having to talk to your neighbor. And when you try to solve a problem that way, you miss something.
Clark calls it venue shopping, when you're worried you won't get the solution you want at the local level.
It's all about the win. And if you can find a venue that lets you win, there are people who put the win actually as a greater good than actually solving the problem. And traditional conservatives would call that out as, well, if liberals did this, we would object to it.
Yeah, great point. So this gets to be a real challenge because we love our local control, and then we're finding ourselves coming in and poking around on local control. And the libraries are a fine example.
What we have seen, again, is just illustrated, are the attempts of a few people to label certain books as pornographic.
There's this session's library bill.
They only have to react when someone complains.
As well as Representative Ted Hill's idea.
I'm not going to be a sheep at my school, and so I'm going to do something about it.
To allow teachers to conceal carry in schools.
The local control and our local school board had the right information to make a decision for Middleton.
Representative Hill points to Idaho law already allowing school districts to regulate guns as they see fit. But some, in his opinion,
all I want to do is secure the schools, and that's just it.
Haven't done enough. What is your stance on local control philosophy?
Well, that's the great thing. That's the best way to go. And in this case, local control with school boards is a confusion because school boards act autonomously in many ways.
When it comes to school boards, they're elected positions, correct?
Correct.
So whatever the decisions they make for those people in the district, well, they'll be held accountable at the ballot box.
Sure.
So you say they're autonomous, they're kind of not.
Well, they have a tendency to act autonomously because they follow policy. Legislators write the law.
It sounds like you're kind of making an argument against local control because you're taking it away from that one-on-one interaction between a principal, a school board, a family, a community.
Well, that's absolutely. And I think this is great because they know their district the best. But there has to be overarching guidance. It's like a military. Do you want to have every single platoon across the country do as they please? No, you got to have some sort of generalized, centralized, I would say at this point, some strategic level. And in this case, Idaho is a strategic level
Is this hypocritical of the majority party right now that are kind of pushing these ideas?
There are members of the legislature who I do think know that they're being hypocritical, but they're making a choice between, do I want to be accused of being hypocritical, or do I want to be accused of not acting on an issue my constituents want me to act on?
Did you happen to catch Representative Hill, what he said about comparing local control to platoons in the military? He said, do we want every single platoon across the country doing as they please? He says, no, there has to be some centralized control. So my question would have been, how would that argument fly when it comes to states' rights? Trent Clark believes the abandonment of this philosophy is a national trend and people's impatience with the political process. Board meetings are, once a month they do these things? They take time. Trent also reminded us of an old saying in politics: a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still, meaning using the legislature to force a local school board, for example, to do something doesn't mean you've changed their mind on that issue. And he agrees with the idea of, say, librarians knowing their local community. If you take those decisions away from that librarian, you'll end up with some really bad decisions being made.